Dare Companies, welcome back to Touch Base. I'm Josh Haynes. I'm the Director of Community Impact, and I am super excited for today's conversation to welcome in Omar Sandoval. He is the VP of Technical Operations for Quext. I've kind of maybe twisted his arm into joining me for a conversation about empathy as we kind of tackle this, I guess, fourth facet of emotional intelligence. We've talked through self-awareness, we've talked through self-regulation, we've done motivation, and now we get to empathy, and we bring you in. And so it's great to have you here. Thanks you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you who've watched the podcast a little bit, you've possibly seen Omar before. He joined us in the past with Larry Lafreniere as they discussed Quext Connect and broadband and the video services that we're trying to provide to the various communities and properties. So it's great to have you back. But for those who didn't maybe get a chance to see that episode, why don't you give us a quick bio, a little bit about you, then we can kind of get to know who you are before we jump into all the feelings.
Sure, absolutely, no problem. So I actually just completed my 1-year anniversary on the 29th of March. A lot of my background is in the telecom industry, cable industry as well. So a few years ago, I was working with another company, and we were starting, when Quext first started coming around, we had started partnering to do some deployments on behalf of Quext. I did that for a year, obviously working with Larry and the guys and Trey. I had known them in the past from a previous company that we were all together in. So throughout that year, we were working really close with each other. First part of last year, it was a great opportunity for me to be able to come on board as we call a Quexter, right, as a Quext team member. But I was really excited to come on board. Dave and Larry approached me and said, hey, we'd really love to have you over. So I made the move over. I still get to work with the former company that I was with, which is great. A lot of great people over there. Mm-hmm. But really excited to be here, and I came on board.
Yeah. Very cool. So we actually came on board kind of around the same time together, because I didn't get here. I got here 1st of February. So.
Well, I tell you what, you blink your eyes and the year has gone by, right?
It's very true. True.
It is. But it's just great to be here. Great group of people, great team. Really excited about all the things that we're doing.
Very cool. So we've been kind of navigating this conversation of emotional intelligence and trying to hopefully give people some wise nuggets here and there, mm-hmm. and give people some stories. But when you think emotional intelligence, just in general, like what things come to mind for you?
Oh gosh, I would say some of the big things is definitely understanding, mm-hmm. right? In forms of communication. Being aware of oneself, right, and how you feel with that. Being able to manage emotions, mm-hmm. if that makes sense, right, in different situations. And I think a big piece of that too for me is kind of perception and how you perceive things when it comes your way.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think there's a couple of things that I kind of hit me as you were kind of talking about, just kind of generally, but just the dynamics of emotional intelligence, that it's not mm-hmm. static. It's never static, because you're always dealing with people.
That's right.
And
That's
yourself.
Right. And I don't think you ever, we kind of talked about this the other day, I don't think you ever are fully 100%. I am emotionally intelligent to the highest level, right? It's a thing that is it's continued growth,
right?
It's an investment that you continuously make, mm-hmm. Obviously for the better, greater good for yourself.
Sure.
But it's one of those things also too, Josh. I feel like we always get situations and challenges mm-hmm. Through life that where you get to really practice and work towards building those strong emotional intelligence.
Well, and I think that's a great thought too, because I think one of the things you bring out, and I was just thinking about this, is I have never been who I am today, mm-hmm. going through the things I'm going through today before.
That's right.
And so allowing ourselves a little bit of mercy in the moments, to like, okay, we've made some mistakes clearly mm-hmm. along the way. I've made some mistakes clearly along the way, but the goal is to learn. Right. The goal is to get better. The goal is to continue to move forward. For you, just kind of like as we jump into that particular topic, what is empathy for you? How do you put that into words?
So for me, I feel it's really, I said understanding earlier, part of emotional intelligence. It's really understanding how people think and feel, right? To make it very easy. And if you can do that, then in turn it allows you how to be able to respond to certain situations, right?
Sure.
Really taking a look at that, right? If they're sad, if they're mad, you pick up on those things, and it's just really trying to understand how they're thinking and feeling, right? Up here and in their heart.
Yeah.
And then being able to respond.
Yeah.
The way that you need to in those situations. Yeah. Definitely not an easy road, right? But for sure opens your eyes up more to what emotional intelligence, and in this case empathy, how important it is to really start fostering those traits and skill sets along the way, not just for helping myself, but different perspectives in how I deal with family and work.
Yeah, you got me thinking about something as you were kind of walking through that, especially when it comes to work relationships, because clearly this is a podcast that we're talking to the people we work with, right?
That's right.
Sometimes I think we can get so driven for the project that's sitting in front of us that we maybe sometimes miss the importance of the people engaging with us in the project.
That's right.
How do you... How and again, I didn't prep you necessarily for this comment, for this question, which I like to do to people.
That's okay. That's okay.
But how do we do that, right? The project matters. The business that we're involved in matters. But how do we also bring people to the forefront of what we're doing so that they're seen and they're cared for in the midst of how we do this together?
So, good question. But no, it's very important for us to discuss this, right? Because there are times that probably people do feel that they're not being brought to the forefront or things like that. I'll start off with first, I'm a big advocate of celebrate the small victories, right?
Yeah.
It might not be the full project, but it's a milestone that we've completed, right? So celebrate that part of it. And I think the other part is every team member that is part of a project or organization or something, what they do matters.
Yeah.
Right? It's I reference a lot of sports, when you and I talk, because it's true. It takes the whole team.
Sure.
And even though, and to me, recognition comes in different ways. Obviously some recognition with people you've seen in trade magazines or magazines, things like that. But I think the more important piece of it is the personal recognition to know, hey, Josh, I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah.
I know that you're burning midnight oil and working late, and I know this project's important and it's stressful, but hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Just the little simple things, and by no stretch do I want it to come across like, it's just robotic.
Right.
It's a really thoughtful, sincere thank you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think those parts play a huge role. I mean, even as you get up into, executive or high-level leadership, you want to hear those kind of things.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That kind of reassurance. So I always feel that it's important for my team members and coworkers to hear that, right?
Yeah.
Because not only does it puts them in a different, I wouldn't say different, but it puts them in a positive mindset.
Yeah.
Where they feel appreciated and they want to work harder for you, right?
Right.
Or with you in some instances. But I think it's important, and sometimes we do get a big overcast due to the magnitude of a project or things like that. But I think just like anything else, it's just as important to complete a milestone in a project as it is to make sure that we give gratitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen you do that, in the year we've got to work together. I've seen you do that. I think that's why the people who work with you enjoy working with you, and why you've had some of the success that you've had. Could you talk about maybe some of the times when you had some struggles though, like learning empathy, and like maybe how that brought some discomfort?
Well, you're going to make me uncomfortable talking about it.
Welcome to vulnerability.
I will tell you. Was this one of the questions?
Yeah, it's right there on the... No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
I'm going to give you... Golly. How much time do we have?
Well, I mean, as much time as you want.
I will say, let me start off with this, right? I'm gonna touch on family first.
Okay.
we talk about the, kind of your learning as you move along through life. And I think, the first thing that comes to my mind is my family, right? Where sometimes, our kids were involved in sports, or they were involved in debate, or, all types of school functions that they were involved in. My kids in sports, right? I am a very competitive person, right? We will, Dad will put the gauntlet down if we're playing Monopoly, right? That kind of competitive. But, it was one of those things where I really had to learn, especially when, I was either helping coach or being involved with the team as they were on there, where, there were times, like any other time, where the game didn't go the way we wanted it to. And the rides home from Dallas are very long.
Yeah.
So,
and for those of you who don't know, y'all did club soccer,
we
did some traveling with it.
We did club soccer, traveling, right?
Yep.
And it was really tough you want to talk about discomfort, right? It was really tough, and I learned fairly quickly that there needed to be a separation between team dad and dad, right? Because it was my first, unfortunately, my first reaction was to, let's talk about what went wrong in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And at first, in my mind, the way I was justifying it was, let's talk about what went wrong so that, we can work on it towards the next one. The part that I was missing is how upset she was about the whole picture from the get-go, right? And she wasn't ready to talk about that part, right?
Yeah.
So, sometime later, it dawned on me. I was like, what I'm doing is not a positive thing. I'm reinforcing the way that she's not feeling so good about what has taken place, right? And it's just pushing it further away, where, to the point where she probably doesn't even want to talk about it, period, right? The game is over, let's just get home, I don't want to talk about it. So I learned very, at some point that after the game, there's some decompress. And to put some thought in about the way they feel, not just my youngest, but, my other daughter that played sports as well, or the other kids that were involved in school activities. It was like, you have to separate that part and really listen and feel. With the other kids and my wife and stuff too, we talked about sometimes they don't need me to jump in and save the day and provide guidance and do that, right? Sometimes they just need somebody to listen. They know what to do. They know what the right thing to do. They know, what path to take. And it was that listening part, right? That for me helped that part of it. So discomfort was, I can't go back and turn back time, and after those games, change the way that I communicated across, right? We talked about earlier, communication. So all I can do is try to reconcile that moving forward, right? To do that and talk to her and say, hey, I'm sorry I wasn't aware of the way that you were feeling.
Yeah.
So that's one part, discomfort, family side. The work part of it is there's always a possibility for organizational changes. People move on to different, companies and organizations. And I was a young supervisor, and I was faced with an employee that was moving on. And Josh, I really didn't know how to do that. I was a young supervisor, still developing my skills, right? And you kind of said it earlier, where it was like, hey, man, sorry about that. See you later, You don't know how to react, and I thought about it, obviously through the years, and it still bothers me to this day that I couldn't see, my emotional intelligence wasn't developed enough to pick up on those cues on how to react, right? A lot of people have a hard time when a friend or a family member or somebody has a loved one that's passed. That portion of, I don't know how, and some, unfortunately, would rather not even man, I hope I don't see them today. I hope I don't see them today because I don't know how to react, right?
Right.
So, and those are the things where, once again, it's okay that you don't know how to react. The fact that you're acknowledging that you don't know how to react is one good step forward, right?
Absolutely.
But going back to the employee, and we talked about reconciliation a couple of years later. I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I want to take you out for coffee, right? Part of that reconciliation, I was like, I just didn't know how to react. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I didn't know, and I apologize for that because I wanted to be there for you in any way that I could. I just didn't know how to communicate that part, right? So those are discomforts that happen, and I'm sure that we'll always be faced with it, right?
Right.
Every day.
Let me jump back into a couple of things you've said and kind of take the conversation in a little bit of a different angle here. You've been a supervisor in multiple companies. You've done it for many years. What does it look like, whether it's a branch office with Select Title, or whether it's corporate stuff here with Quext, or maybe it's a property with Madera or Rockwood? What does it look like as a supervisor to be empathetic with your folks, but also hold people accountable to the bar, to the standard of doing that job, and to be able to kind of navigate back and forth between the two? What does that look like?
Well, I will tell you, one, it's not easy.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's different. It's also, I think it's different methods and ways to address some of that, especially if the people that you're working with in this situation are remote versus in the same building as you.
Sure.
Right? So those are two different ways. I think that first and foremost, being empathetic, there's no negative to it.
Agreed.
Right? There is, you have nothing to lose by being empathetic with somebody or a situation, right? But you have a lot to gain. So in doing that, my first recourse is to, first, don't be so quick to react. You know what I mean? Don't be so quick to react. Really step back and take a look at the situation. But I think over time, for myself, if you establish those early relationships, right, and there is something that is going on that is either out of character or it's difficult to happen, for me, you're always laying that foundation down, right, all the time.
Yeah.
To where if I am in a situation where I need to hold people accountable, all the forefront work that I've done, right, makes that part of it easy.
Yeah.
It's a discussion. It's a quiet me time for us just to, let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I really like that. I like that a lot. Let's, kind of talk through this. If you could pass along wisdom to your younger self, or if you could...
How much time do we really have now? Man, wisdom,
This is a 3-hour podcast,
okay,
so you
perfect.
just preach for a while.
Gotcha.
Okay, no, but if you could pass along wisdom, and this is the last question, I've asked everybody, right? If you could pass along wisdom to your younger self, if you could pass along wisdom to some of those who are younger than you, maybe in their 20s or 30s, in the Madera companies, like when it comes to empathy particularly, like what kind of wisdom or what kind of learned things have you gathered that you would say, pick up on this because this one's going to be important for you? What would you say?
I'd say probably one of the biggest things that I would tell a young Omar would be really try to learn to manage your emotions.
Okay.
I think because I didn't have, as most young people don't, right, still trying to learn and start their life, there was a lot of struggle for me there, self-inflicted struggle, right? Because I really didn't know how to manage those emotions. And I think the other part of me is I wish I would have felt or searched out an opportunity to have some really good, unbiased mentors in my life.
Yeah.
You'll come across people that I guess the phrase or the comment, at least this, at least that. To me, I found out later in life that was flags went up. Man, this is not a good mentor for you. I was in a car accident. Well, at least you're not dead. Well, I know, but forget that part. I was in a car accident.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
That's the part that's affecting me.
Yes.
Don't end the discussion or the empathetic part of you with me by the at least part.
Yeah.
And for me, I learned that where it was like, man, that doesn't sound like mentorship to me. The discard, go ahead and completely disregard what the situation is with something else and then move on.
Yeah, because that's not mentorship.
That's right.
That's terrible.
That's right. So, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, for me, I learned later in life, like as yourself, like you just said, that mentorship was important in my life, but I didn't go out to seek it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is the epitome of sympathy, not empathy.
100%.
When somebody says, well, at least this,
Mm-hmm.
that is a person who is not willing to be in that discomfort with
That's
you.
right.
That is a person who's immediately separating themselves from it. And that is sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not empathy.
Correct.
And so, yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. Hey, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having this conversation with us. I hope it's helpful for people out in the field. If not, I feel smarter, so I appreciate
I don't know about all that, but definitely thanks for having me, and I appreciate being here.
Yeah. So friends out there, we'll continue to have a couple more of these. You'll get this one, and then we'll tackle our last facet, emotional intelligence with social skills. We'll talk through that a little bit, and then the big man, CEO Dave Gillis, is going to join us for that final episode.
Perfect.
So thank you guys so much for having joined us. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time.